And welcome everyone to our next panel. Today we'll be speaking about entrepreneurial resilience during hard times. I think we can all speak testament to the fact that some of us may have got punched in the face a little bit or blindsided or railroaded, or insert your descriptive here. It hasn't been easy for anyone. And yet here we are. Who would have thought that we would be living the existences that we do now? And in business, there have been tremendous examples of folks who have not only did they survive, but they thrived through these challenging times. And we're honored to collect some of those voices to share their thoughts of overcoming and being more resilient so you too can develop the type of leather it takes to grow into more of what you believe is in your core to explore. Good afternoon, everyone. We are speaking about the concept of resilience and why it's important for times such as these. And it's so fantastic we've been able to gather this group. I'd like to start off with Omar. He is the CEO and founder of the Alam Advisory Group, and he'll share a little bit more about what he does. And of course, if you guys were with us yesterday, on a couple of different occasions, you heard from Robert. Robert, of course, represents Gavreau and Associates, and I think he owes me a beer on a patio one of these days. I don't know, I complimented him too much yesterday. And there will be a book plug coming again, Robert, I promise you, because I want that second drink. So there will be a book plug coming again. Nunzio Presto, thank you. He's a friend of the magazine. He's been with us on this journey for a couple of years now, and he always adds so much value. He's the founder and CEO of Buy and Sell a Business. And Genj is here from Alexio. She's a strong supporter of our Canada Business Talk series that we deliver on a quarterly basis. Our next one is coming up in August, so we certainly look forward to that. And Kimberly Clark is here from KCI Management. Now, if there's one person that you want to take some advice from, take it from the 13-year-old Kimberly Clark and her mom. Hey, if you ever get that story out of her, you will be completely and entirely impressed. It's just a fantastic story of home ownership of all things. So if you ever get that story out of her, more power to you. Today, our panel is moderated by Warren Cogg. He comes with a wealth of knowledge and experience. Without me waxing poetic about who he is, I'd like to give him the opportunity to introduce himself as we work our way through today's topic. Warren, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much. Nice to talk to everybody. So it's Warren Coughlin. I'm a business coach. I've been working with entrepreneurs since about 2002 to help them build what I call a business that matters. I'm also a recovering lawyer, an actor, a theater director, and a college professor and a serial entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to talk to a bunch of other really experienced entrepreneurs and the successes and experiences they've had with resilience. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to start with Robert. Let's start with even what we think resilience is. People toss the word around, but not everybody has the same understanding of it. Some have said resilience is the ability to bounce back, but often, as in something like COVID, there's no bouncing back. It's about kind of integrating the experience in a transformed way. So if we're talking about resilience, what does that mean to you? I mean, you've stood out or worked with a bunch of different companies. You've advised a lot of them. How does this notion of resilience fit into your experience and your insights? How do you know resilience when you see it, or how do you identify where it's lacking?
Yeah,
and it's a little bit about you first too, before you answer that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Robert Govro, founding partner at Govro CPA. Essentially, we're a CPA firm that provides accounting, tax, and advisory services to the SME community. So resilience to me, it's interesting. I feel like it's more of an emotional state. One of the questions that's tied into that was the ability to bounce back, and sometimes financially. I think there's financial resilience, and then there's the emotional resilience. And when I think of resilience, I'm more so thinking of the emotional side. Sometimes financially, you can't bounce back. Sometimes financially, a business may no longer be able to survive. But resilience to me is more the emotional side. And I would say, as the saying goes, there's no such thing as losing or failure. There's only winning or learning. And it's not an easy concept to internalize, really. And no one likes to face setbacks or loss. But I know that along my entrepreneurial journey that I've had multiple setbacks, and some of them more difficult to accept than others. However, when you have the ability to reflect on them and learn from them, it only makes you stronger. And in my case, makes me a better advisor to my clients because I can share my experience of what works and what doesn't because I've had those setbacks. So, for me, again, I know that this has been, the last 15 months have been incredibly difficult for so many people. There have been setbacks. But I think, again, the resilience piece is, and I'm probably going to speak to it a little bit more addressing other questions, but the resilience piece to me is more emotional. Can we put ourselves in a state where we can bounce back or continue to fight or modify or alter? And I think there's been a whole bunch of different words related to that. Just changing the position that we're in, changing our strategy and adapting to, the new environment.
Thanks, Robert. And joining us is Nicholas Reichenbach. Nice to have you with us.
There's always one person that's late.
Hey, always. Nice to have you here. Better late than never. We're just talking about what resilience actually means, what the word means, and how you can identify it. You've had a lot of pretty interesting experiences across a whole bunch of different organizations. So first off, just tell us a little bit more about you. And then secondly, how do you identify resilience? When you look across the portfolio of businesses you've been associated with, how do you know when resilience is there, and how do you identify where it's lacking?
Yeah, good question. My apologies for showing up late, technical problems. I'm Nicholas Reichenbach, the executive chairman and founder of Flow. Flow is a Canadian-based premium enhanced water company, and we put it in an eco-friendly pack that's made out of plant-based renewable resources. Resilience, having been an entrepreneur for my entire life, and this is my 11th company, resilience is pretty key to actually succeeding across a multitude of different levels. But it's definitely not one action. It's not just being able to adapt to change, but it's very multi-dimensional. And so when you think about resilience, it's, being able to adapt to an incoming force, but also knowing what directions and actions to take to get around it and to actually succeed. Some people call it pivoting and pivoting around it, but constantly as an entrepreneur, you're dealing with these forces that are arguably quite larger than you're capable of heading on straight at the front. So resilience to me is being able to not only identify the incoming issues, but also have a very swift plan to adapt and move around in a very innovative way to be able to achieve the goals that you want. At the same time, not derail the entire thing through costs or other things. So it's definitely, talk about a year of resilience that we just went through in 2020. Wow, it was like probably the most difficult year that I've ever experienced as a person and an entrepreneur and a business owner. And of course, all of our staff and most of the people on the planet. And so resilience really took a really different meaning than what it had previous to last year, because we were able to, we had to react to something that was completely out of our control, but yet steer the ships on our retrospective businesses to be able to not only achieve the goals that we want, but to actually thrive in an environment that was thought to be slightly negative. And in a lot of cases, it was a very negative thing. So we spent a lot of time just being able to figure out how to move around and build competitive moats of change to be able to actually continue to grow the same rate that we'd been achieving the year before and the year before that. So I think, the resilience is definitely multidimensional. That involves, identifying and moving around things that are pivoting, and your ability to be able to grab a hold of that really fast and react to it with team effort and energy and focus is pretty much the moment of success that people will have in any sort of resilient environment.
Nice. It's kind of neat. The two answers were you know, in one sense it's mindset, and in the other set it's also action, and the two together are really combined to produce that outcome.
Yeah.
One of the things that's I find is entrepreneurs are often characterized as risk takers, right? But I've seen one study, and it's been pretty consistent with my experience as a business coach, is that entrepreneurs aren't actually risk takers, but they're optimists. They don't actually see the risks inherent in their idea because they just can't believe that their brilliant idea could do anything but succeed. And that actually has some implications when you run up against hard times, right? So I want to ask our next panelist, you know, do you see that? And what does that mean for resilience when things turn out to be much tougher than they thought? Are entrepreneurs truly prepared for tough times? And your business is in some ways built around the idea of making operations resilient. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Ann Gensch, Alexio Corporation. I'm a CEO and co-founder. Our business is the business of keeping your data secure. We work with a lot of small businesses. You really can't avoid knowing there's risk for you as a business owner. Everyone's using computers, collecting data, different levels of sensitive data. We know that this data needs to be protected, but smaller businesses have a bigger challenge because they don't have the big budgets that large organizations have. And of course, we can even see that many large organizations are having a lot of problems with cyber risk. So I like what you said there. What's interesting to me always, I speak with people about the fact that I'm an entrepreneur, and often that comes up. Oh, you're such a risk taker. I couldn't saddle that kind of risk. For me, I sort of see myself as not a risk taker, but I'm not risk adverse. Interestingly, I'm in the risk management business. I'm constantly scanning, understanding the environment, making choices for my customers, but then again, also for my own business. The optimism, that's a non-negotiable. As an entrepreneur, you need to have optimism. You need to come from a place of understanding that everything is figure-outable, that whatever spot you're in is temporary. You become very good at visualizing outcomes. And interestingly, I loved the previous conversation because it talked about resilience. Every time you do figure out something, I think that it adds to your toolkit. Resilience, to me, is building that toolkit. And every time you do that, it's an incremental growth, or it's an incremental strength. And then there's greater underpinnings for that optimism, because then now you have, what do you have next, right? It's evidence. So now when I come up against things, I go, okay, I might get bruised here. I might get some battle scars, but I'm certainly not going to curl up and die. We're going to come through this. What that's going to look like, I always try to look forward. And again, that's optimism, is visualizing what would it be like if we make it. So I think it's not something that you can, I think you need to be born with a certain amount of it. Naturally, there are a lot of people that think they want to be an entrepreneur and they don't make it. You have to have this certain thing. But the optimism and maybe not being risk adverse certainly helps us to build our toolkit and have these better successes as entrepreneurs. So
nice. Yeah, there's sort of like there's a concept called the confidence competence loop, right? Like the more you do something and succeed, it builds your competence. That competence then builds your confidence, which allows you to take more action, which then builds your competence and goes on. I remember at the beginning of COVID, I've been through 5 downturns, I think. And so when it hit, I had clients who were frozen, but just by saying, okay, let's take action, we can do this. There's options available to you. It just gives you more confidence that you're going to be able to come through this. Nunzio, on your side, like you see so many entrepreneurs entering and exiting businesses. Do you find, are they prepared for the risks, or does it catch them by surprise, particularly like first-time entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so Nunzio Presta here, founder and CEO of buyandsellbusiness.com, online marketplace where people can buy and sell businesses or franchises. generally under $5 million in enterprise value. We've accumulated a connection value of over 2 billion to date. So having fun, but you're absolutely right. If you think of optimism, right, that's a key component for progress. Whether the goal is to grow or exit, and if you think about entrepreneurship, the goal is really to progress, make things better, and add value to the world. So I do agree with that statement, but I do believe that good entrepreneurs are also oblivious to the consequences. But great entrepreneurs are constantly measuring and auditing their happiness and performance in order to mitigate some risk. And I think looking back at the types of entrepreneurs or business owners that I've come in contact with, I've seen two main reasons why great entrepreneurs are resilient and prepared during tough times. The first is they're chasing the right motives, a motive with no particular end game. For example, Google organizing the world's information, that really never ends. That's a constant journey. Or if we were to, make it more relevant to this conversation, Nicholas's introduction on flow, obviously it's great water and he wants to make great tasting water, but it's deeper than just making water, right? There's this aspect to the business, and I'm just throwing it out there that, he wants to make the world a better place, more sustainable and eco-friendly. That really is the right motive to attack as a business. So I see that great entrepreneurs are really focused on that and become more resilient during tough times. The second that I've seen is they really balance resilience and wishful thinking, right? So they understand that you're going to get knocked down, but that's to pivot instead of quit. So, great entrepreneurs are great listeners and constantly, like I said before, measuring their happiness and performance, as well as auditing their business environment to make sure they're going down the right direction at the right time. And as a best practice, I guess my last note here is a best practice. What we do at buyandsellbusiness.com is we audit our environment with a model called SET. So it measures social, economic, and tech trends. So we have this focused direction and strategic clarity, and it allows us to stay ahead of the curve as much as possible. So I think if entrepreneurs and business owners think this way, they can definitely be prepared for tough times.
Nice, thank you. Kimberly, you're part of an industry that was initially hit pretty hard by COVID, and if memory serves, took a bit of a wallop back in the financial crisis in 2009. And you've come through all of that. So where do you draw your motivation and inspiration to continue to move forward when things get tough?
Yeah, thanks, Warren. So Kimberly Clark, and contrary to popular belief, I don't own the toilet paper company. But to expand on the introduction, geez, I guess I wish I did own a toilet paper company during the pandemic. But when I was 13, I can say I did own the company. The story with the intro is my mom bought me shares for my 13th birthday, 13 shares that split multiple times. And eventually those shares became the down payment for my first house. So Kimberly Clark
awesome.
Corporation bought my first house. That's the story. Yeah, so we're in the corporate events business, Warren. So we're all about bringing people together in live and in-person environments, which during pandemic times, not awesome to be in. So having said that, we successfully transitioned to the digital environment. And had some fun figuring that out and learning that. But, this pandemic was not, to your point, not the only time I found myself under adverse conditions. Certainly the economic downturn in 2009. And then even bigger than that for us, actually, in 2016, we lost our biggest client that comprised of 80% of our revenue. So yes, I had all my eggs in one basket. That was on purpose. That was intentional. It was a global tech firm. And I always thought, I knew it wouldn't last forever, but I thought I'd see it coming, and maybe we were working with many divisions of the company, and I thought we'd start to see it wind down. But unfortunately, we got caught in the middle of a political battle, and ourselves and a number of other agencies were delisted. That was 80% of our revenue in 2015. We got this news in mid-February 2016, and where do I get my motivation and inspiration? At first, I didn't have any. I'll be honest. Emotionally, I was toast. I thought we were done. So have to take a few minutes and cry and get all that figured out and be depressed and be bummed, and then face the worst case scenario. But my motivation and my inspiration is 100% for the people around me, right? So first and foremost is I have people counting on me. I have, the people in my business that I employ, I have their families that they're counting on them. I have my own family. So that's an easy one for motivation and inspiration. But first I have to face the tough stuff. First I have to, deal with the upset, the sadness. And then I can start to, kind of gather the strength from around me. And I think part of being resilient, back to, what is resilience? For me, it's not, I can't necessarily say that I'm a resilient person. I can say I'm well resourced. I am very fortunate to have, I think resilient people have strong resources around them. And so that's when I turn and to my network, to my support. And, I think resilient people are well resourced. And so that for me is very important.
That's great insights. And I love the fact that you were vulnerable enough to say that, sometimes when people talk about resilience, they think it's like being tough all the time and just plowing through. But the fact that part of being resilient is allowing yourself to go through whatever emotional, journey you have to go through. And sometimes that means, I have to acknowledge that I took a bit of a kick in the teeth. Were you raising your hand to ask a question, Omar?
I am. I just wanted to kind of pick up on what Kimberly was saying. I think what's interesting and I think what's really authentic and what I love about Kimberly is that it's okay if you don't have everything figured out. I think if everybody in business would be authentic and true to themselves and admit that they don't exactly know what to do all the time, I think we'd be so much further ahead. And I think that infrastructure, she said that she's very well resourced. I think it's the infrastructure, both from the physical standpoint in terms of having a network around you, people that you can rely on, that you can call up and say, hey, how you doing, right? Lend an ear, chime in when you need someone to give you advice. And I think it's the people that you build around you in your ecosystem. I think that really supports you in trying to get through these times. And I think that's what makes you more resilient because, as you build out your plans and your strategies, they're only as good as how you execute them, right? And I think there will be a time when tomorrow, some external factor will impact the way that decision would have been made previously. And then you'd have to move forward in a different direction, right? And I think, it's very important that, people just try to, just stop downplaying the big ego. I think we need to stop this ego blockage. And I think we need to, be true to ourselves and also build, strong mental health systems within yourself, but also people in your organization. Take care of yourself, take care of your people. I think that's what makes you strong. That's what will make you stay stronger and will help you get through tough times, right? So just wanted to add to that.
Yeah,
and during tough times like this, I'll call someone up like Kimberly and say, look, I'm having a hard time. Or, hey, do you need help with anything? I'm here for you, right? And I think that's important. I think we need to do that as business owners. You're not alone. Right? We're all, this saying, we're all in this together, but it's true to form, right? Whether your neighbor, whether it's your colleague, whether it's just a business peer or someone in your network, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's actually, I find in my role as a coach, sometimes I've had clients tell me that like I'm the only person they can talk to about their emotional stuff because they can't express their fear to their spouse. They can't express it to their employees because they're worried they'll leave if they look vulnerable or something. But they always need that kind of support. So Omar, I'm going to come back to you. So when there is a disruption, whether COVID, a financial crisis, change in interest rates, whatever, there's a changed circumstance. One of the things I've seen people struggle with a little bit is in light of those changed circumstances, do I stick to the goals that I set? Like it was funny, right? In 2020, there was this whole, hey, 2020, clear vision, let's set clear goals. And, the world changed. So do you stick to your goals or do you allow yourself to shift them? And how do you go about doing that? And maybe just do a quick intro to yourself too, Omar.
Yeah, so chief executive of a global trade consultancy that essentially helps small, mid-size, middle market, large publicly traded companies and not-for-profit and social clients that are looking to expand their businesses globally, both from an export development, but an investment side. And then we also work with companies that are looking at foreign direct investment opportunities. Look, I think you need a plan in place that is evergreen. Things will change all the time. There's so many external factors and risks that will impact how you do business on a daily basis. I think, again, that infrastructure piece is critical to understanding that you will need to change tomorrow based on a reality that you may need to forecast or something that will just hit you like a meteor. I think what we've seen and what we've endured is that COVID will have a lasting impact on how we live and do business. right? And I think as we start to reset and recover, I think there's a sense of optimism, but what you really need to do is have at least a foundation of a plan in place. And what I find a lot of organizations don't have a plan. They're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, right? We're just going to try to sell, we're going to try to get customers, but you're not really thinking of the bigger picture, and you're not really managing risks. So what's unique with our business is that we're trying to help companies expand into new markets, but we're also working with them to manage those risks, to offset the risks, right? As we're helping them navigate the business, legal, regulatory environment in those markets. But in turn, as a business owner, I'm trying to do the same thing. And, as Kimberly had mentioned, there was times where we got hit really hard, right? There's different markets that we're taking risks and taking clients in those markets as well. So it's a big risk for us. So I think you need to be able to have a plan in place, but change on the fly. And I think, again, it's the people that are around you in your organization that will help you execute, right? You can't just do everything by yourself, right?
And do you notice, I mean, you probably have the most international experience of people here. Is there anything unique to the Canadian response to that, or things we can learn from others as far as that kind of ability to plan or think forward?
I think, truthfully, I think a lot of countries, and truth be told, when I first started the company, I really wanted to take Canadian companies globally, but I felt as though they were very risk averse. I don't want to go global. Maybe just cross-border trade with the US, and it's safe, right? Mm-hmm. But what I find is that a lot of companies talk up a big game, sadly, right? In comparison to American firms or European firms, which are much more aggressive. They know what they want, their goals are set, and they want to advance and they want to move rapidly. So I find that from a planning perspective, and this is not all companies, right? I'm just saying the majority of small businesses that don't have the capacity or the propensity or the bench strength or the agility to go into global markets, I think the first thing that we're lacking is a plan in place. And I think that's critical, right? So I think what's happening is a lot of companies in our market just got hit really hard, got knocked down, but they had no plan of action in place, right? There was no contingency plan. There was no risk mitigation plan, right? And think of the last 4 years with President Trump and all of the shakeups in our bilateral relationship with the United States. It's always been the common theme was expect the unexpected and have a contingency plan in place, whether it's foreign exchange risks, whether it's political risks, whether it's security risks, you name it, right? So I think from that perspective, I think we got hit hard because a lot of companies weren't prepared.
Right. Let me bring Anne into that. How about you? How do you adapt to changing circumstances? Do you hold fast or do you shift?
Well, as you can imagine, being in the cybersecurity business, we have to have a lot of structure, right? We're very well structured, and we were very fortunate to have, I had a good road experience in what business planning and business processes should look like. Look, there's an old saying, adapt or die, right? When all of this hit, I think our financial goals really stayed fairly much the same, but how we were going to get there changed a bit. A lot of our customers leaned on us for slightly different things. They had to rapidly adopt the digital environment. My passion and where I have a lot of experience is supporting healthcare. So all of a sudden we were doing, we were using remote telehealth services where we didn't before. You need to have that plan. I agree with Omar, and I see, mostly what I'm dealing with is small business. Plans are definitely lacking, and it's interesting how we use a lot of the same language in cyber, and that is, prevention, disaster prevention, but disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is what we were doing, over this last year, right. Not with data, but with everything else. That's where I sit on that. I think, yes, of course, you need to have those benchmarks and those things that you set out to do. But most of us who have been in this as an entrepreneur for any length of time, which everyone on this panel is, we know that you have to, move the needle. Sometimes you're pushing string. It's hard, right? But you need to be able to do that using that overused word pivot, but move into that change and make the best of it.
Right. And build the plan. I'm seeing that a lot too. Just the ability, people are afraid to plan in uncertain times, but it's a crucial skill.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hey,
in the face
Warren,
I'm conscious of the time, so I just got to make sure we get through it all. In the face of like these changing and challenging circumstances, I want to sort of go back to Robert on this. Like, what are the bedrock principles and belief that allow you to continue, or with the people you're advising? Like, part of it, there's got to be a foundational, almost ethical perspective. I use both those terms intentionally, principles and beliefs, as they each can drive resilience. Do you feel any that are not necessarily just specific to you, but are essential or universal?
Yeah, and just before I answer the question, I'm just going to jump in and say it's interesting that a lot of the panelists are talking about the challenges that face businesses, small businesses primarily, and not having plans, which is almost a result of programs we created, which is a virtual CFO program that helps small businesses plan, budget, and stay on target, almost out of necessity. Because accounting firms don't traditionally do that, but we jumped into that space because it has been such a missing piece for so many small businesses. But to jump in here, it's an interesting and important question. And when I think about foundational principles and beliefs, I think of Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and I'm sure many of you have read that book, and if you haven't, you definitely should. But when he talks about it, he says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think that's the foundational piece that you're talking about with principles and beliefs. And he goes on to say even more, that says, why is a purpose? It's a cause or belief. It's the very reason that our organization exists. And to me, this is incorporated into the core values of an organization, what they believe and how they do things. And I feel like when a business is clear on their purpose and what they stand for, the entire organization buys into this mission, almost if nothing can get into its way. And I'll give you an example. So our organization, GoPro CPA, public accounting firm, has 3 core values. And these core values are something that every single member of our team buys into. Those values are people, passion, and integrity. And we live and breathe by them, ultimately to the point where we're recruiting, we're asking people and sharing with them our values and our beliefs about where our organization's going and what are the core values that unite each and every one of us. And if they don't buy into those values, then we don't bring them on as a team member. So it's super interesting that is essentially the foundation of almost everything that we do. Now, when the global pandemic hit and uncertainty and fear were at the highest level, we had a meeting which I led with our team, right? Everybody had fear because of the unknown, and we never really addressed anything like this. Not only fear for our organization, but fear for our clients, fear for our families and our health and our safety and security. And essentially at that time, everything was really shaken. And again, we're talking about resilience, and everyone was very unsure of how to react. And our meeting went a little bit like this. We have this core value or these core values that we're all foundationally supported by: people, passion, and integrity. And more so than ever, all the people that we support, our families, our clients, need us more than ever. And the passion that unites us needs to come alive, because those members of the community really need us right now. And we need to continue to deliver more than we ever have at the highest level. And honestly, and back to the question of talking about the foundation principles and beliefs, I feel like the core values inside an organization, when they're truly aligned, provides resilience that allows everyone to bond together to be truly resilient and truly strong towards creating an even stronger future.
Nice. Now I'm noticing the time. We only have a couple of minutes left. So I just want to finish off with sort of an organizational question. I think, Nunzio, given your experience with individual entrepreneurs entering and exiting, you might have an interesting perspective on this. And then if there's a little bit of time, Nicholas, given the number of companies you've been involved in, you might have an insight onto this. Where we're shifting from this COVID to post-COVID, what would you recommend to build resilience, not for the entrepreneur, but for the organization? How do you build a resilient organization? I imagine, Nunzio, as people are buying businesses, one that looks like it can endure tough times makes it a more attractive buy. What comprises, or how do you help an organization build that resilience that isn't dependent just on the owner?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's building a business that's not dependent on the owner. Those are the types of businesses that we always recommend our users to look for, because those are the more resilient organizations that can make decisions, on their own without the buy-in from, a particular person. So it's called the Switzerland structure. And we always say you want to try and look for those types of companies that aren't dependent on one leader, one supplier, one client, etc. But on a deeper level, I think, to build a resilient organization, the foundation really has to be around love, encouragement, and support, right? And I also think, the love of learning and the ability to take a setback and keep going has to be contagious, and it has to start, or it starts and finishes with leadership. You really have to rally the troops, and you have to have, like I said before, extreme clarity around the organization's cause, because that's what's going to direct and guide the business even during the most uncertain times. Also, a deep and meaningful cause ensures that everyone remains inspired to continue contributing their time and energy for the long run. And that's another book from Simon Sinek. And that book talks about this a lot, the long run, the long game, and it's called The Infinite Game. So that's a must read that really talks about how to build a resilient organization. But like Robert mentioned just right now, when you have a cause that's deeply rooted and meaningful, with the ultimate goal of making things better, it creates purpose, and purpose creates a workforce with grit to succeed, even over the most challenging things. On another note, if we were to look at a post-COVID strategy, you really have to dig deep on how to bring people back to the office, right? The US right now is already going through this, with the majority of leaders and entrepreneurs embracing this hybrid work strategy. And it's really about understanding the comfort level of your workers and ensuring everyone really feels safe and happy. And what I can say is that workers that feel safe and happy are less stressed, more engaged, more productive, more creative, and ultimately more resilient. And this is, this means great things for your company morale as well as your bottom line. But when you add up all these things that I've just chatted about, I think that's when you're creating an environment and an organization where people can be resilient, right? You need to understand, I think the main thing that you really have to understand is that organizational resilience requires employee well-being. So you have to take care of your people, and you can't afford to tarnish relationships for a moment in time or for a year, because at the end of the day, if you don't have people, you don't have a business.
Right on. Nicholas, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you hit on it just briefly, but don't ever underestimate the power of momentum, right? And being in COVID for the last year or so, it's like rolling a ball up a mountain, okay? But it's definitely coming down the other side with the equal, if not greater, force of momentum. And so when we looked at, what our post-COVID strategy was very strategically engineered to create momentum, right? And so, I don't know if we talked about it, but Flow's going public very shortly on the desired exchange, TSX. And we started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but we kept on developing strategies that would tie the entire organization together seamlessly to be able to create massive momentum, both from sales and corporate strategy and new leadership. And I really took a very specific strategy to be able to bring these things together when we were all dissipated apart, to force everyone on the same path and be it very swift and fast, moving down the other side of the mountain. We've now created much more force. So my take back is, what's a post-COVID environment? It's go time. right? It's go time. Let's get this thing back on track. Let's get the momentum going, because back to your point, the world's the same place. We want it to be a better place. We want progression. We want purpose. And I think from a leadership perspective, it's super important for any entrepreneur and anyone that has a workforce to be able to lobby, align, and create that momentum back to a positive place.
Nice. Thanks so much. Those are great. Shiraz, I'm not sure if you're still on here, if we're going to take questions from outside or not, but just in terms of wrapping up a little bit of what we heard, I hope there was some really, really brilliant insights from a group of very experienced entrepreneurs that I hope people have taken away some really great lessons that may not be the obvious lessons at a time like this. Like what I heard a lot of was just the overriding importance of having clear purpose, of having integrity, about building a culture and looking after yourself and your people. And the mindset behind that's so important, and then driving that into proactive action through pretty disciplined practice of planning. And if people can combine that combination of the internal and the external, you're going to build resilience within yourself as an entrepreneur, but also within your organization as well. Is Shiraz still with us? If not, then I think that we're pretty much at the end of our time here. So I just want to first thank all the panelists. There was so much candor and experience and great insights. I really, really appreciate it. I'm delighted to have, participated in this discussion on such I think is a really crucial topic for small business. It was organized by Canadian SME and was joined by these great panelists. On behalf of all of us here on the panel, I'd like to thank Canadian SME for this exceptional experience of sharing the platform with these great industry leaders. Canadian SME is truly dedicated to creating opportunities that are accessible, transparent, and helpful for Small Businesses Canada. And while Canadian SME has a bold vision, together moving forward, it's an honor to be part of this mission and, more importantly, a part of this amazing network. So thank you all very, very much for being here.